So, welcome to the lecture number 18 of this finite volume series, and what we are discussing, or rather we have discussed so far right now into the business of doing the calculation for the gradient. And gradient calculation, as we have seen our previous lectures, we have two approaches. One is the using compact stencil, other one is the extended stencil. And in the last lecture we have discussed the calculation procedure using the compact stencil. So, now you will move to that today on the using the so essentially what we are doing, the gradient which is for a particular cell is represented as summation over all the faces, and so this is what we are into the business. So, essentially that is the gradient calculation that we are trying to do. So, that is our objective. Now, once you are trying to do this gradient calculation, there are ways how we can do that, and especially when you move to the non-orthogonal system, you come across the cross diffusion term. So, gradient calculation becomes very important in the sense that in the cross diffusion term cannot be evaluated using the nodal values. Now, how do you define your discretized stencil? That leads to two approaches. One is the using some sort of a compact stencil, and where what you do that you have a correction term for your flux or the surface flux, which is like G c phi c minus 1 by G c phi f, where C is the particular element that one is concerned of calculating the. So, essentially if you quickly have a diagram like a particular cell, this is C what we are interested, and this is F, and this is the connecting line between C and F. So, and this is the phase F. So, calculation of the phase values which are interpolated using this formula, and G c actually is nothing but your geometric weighting factor. So, this, and how to calculate this surface flux phi f or the corrected flux and the G c, for that there are different options. So, we have discussed three options: option 1, option 2 and option 3. So, that is what we have essentially done till the last class. Now, what we want to see using is the compact stencil. We have looked at it. So, now we want to look at is the extended stencil. So, that means which clearly give us an idea the cell which would be calculated, it is not going to be connected with an immediate cell like this, rather it would be connected with some other surrounding element. So, to do that, let us look at this particular stencil. So, look at this 2D stencil. Now, why we call it extended? Because there are F1, F2, F3, F4, these all are connected. So, you can see the cells contributing to a particular node, which is node for the weighted average. So, being said that, you can see the node N1 which is getting contribution, since that node is common to three different elements like F1, F2, F3. So, that gets the contribution from all three elements. Similarly, if you look at the node N2, the N2 is getting contribution from all three elements like F2, F3, F4, and connections between F is the face between N1 and N2, or the connecting node between N1 and N2. Now what we need to calculate is the value of phi F. So what we are interested, finding this value, finding the value of phi at the face F, which can be computed as the mean of the values at the vertices N1 and N2. So this essentially necessitates the estimation of the properties at the vertices. So far we have been dealing with the system where we all concerned about the values which are available at the cell center. Now here, while you are trying to calculate this surface flux, you need to get an information at the nodal point. So the properties at a vertex node are calculated using this weighted average. So this is some sort of a weighted average which is used. Now how we take the weighted average? Because we take some sort of a inverse distance function to calculate this kind of weighted average. So in that case, when you calculate the phi n, which can be expressed as the summation over k equals to 1 to NBN phi Fk divided by Rn minus Rfk, and denominator, this is k equals to 1 to NBN 1 divided by Rn minus Rfk. So here n stands for the vertex node, Fk neighboring cell node, NBN stands for the total number of cell nodes surrounding the vertex node. So surrounding the vertex node. So essentially you get all this information and vertex node n, and then we have a distance function Rn minus Rfk. So that stands for the distance from the vertex node to the centroid of the neighboring cells. So that's what it gets you back. So you have all the information, you have the vertex node, you have the total number of nodes, you have the neighboring cell node, then you have the distance from the vertex node to the centroid, and then you can get some sort of a distance, average distance calculation. Once the phi n at the vertices are found, then at the face you can find out the phi f as phi n1 plus phi n2 divided by 2. So using this sort of a inverse distance calculation at n1 and n2 we can find out, and once we find out n1 and n2, the surface flux or the variable could be obtained using some sort of a arithmetic mean, and similarly the gradient would be calculated 1 by Vc summation of F NBC phi f SF, which is 1 by Vc summation of, then we get phi n1 plus phi n2 divided by 2 at F SF. So when you go to 3D system, the calculations are little bit involved, but it goes in the similar fashion, and there you can also go across all the nodes or the vertex node and can find out. Now, in this particular approach, the information from the wrong side of the cell also contributes to the weighted average. So, if you look at this picture, it may possible that the cells which are actually sitting on the wrong side, they can also contribute to this weighted average to the conserved variables. So, this can be overcome by using some sort of an upwind biased gradient, and the higher order calculation based on the upwind biased gradients have both the memory overhead. So, essentially there could be some, you can note contribution to the weighted average from wrong cells. That is possible. If that happens, it can be overcome by some upwind biased gradients calculation. And if you use some sort of an higher order upwind biased calculation, the computing overhead also goes up. So, the computing overhead also goes up. So, that is little bit involved, and now if you move to 2D to 3D, that becomes bit tricky. Now, so that is how one can use the compact stencil and calculate the flux variable at the face. Now, we can move to the another option is that least square gradient calculation. So, this is another option, and least square method it offer actually more flexibility. So, it offers more flexibility with the regard to the order of accuracy. So, order of accuracy is also slightly better or higher compared to other. And in the least square method, what happens, the divergent based gradient can be recovered as a special case. So, that is one of the advantage of this least square method. And the flexibility, when we talk about the flexibility, it brings some flexibility to a table, it actually comes at certain cost. So, as proper weighting is needed for the stencil terms, the computation of weights add to some sort of an computational cost. So, this is getting hit by some sort of an computational overhead. So, once it offers you better flexibility or slightly better accuracy, it also comes with some sort of an computational overhead. So, it is not that straightforward that you can get everything together in your plate and get these things. So, let us look at this particular stencil and the change in the, so here the cell which are concerned cell is cell C, and these are the all neighboring cell, and then we can have an exchange between C and F. So, this could be F1, F2 like that, and this we need to get the information of phi C, phi F and all this. So, to calculate the gradient, and so this with shows the schematic with the neighboring cells of this. Now, how do we obtain that phi F? Phi F it obtained at the using the value of phi C plus delta phi C dot RF minus RC, which is essentially the RCF. Now, the thing is that unless the solution field is linear, the cell gradient cannot be exact, because C has more neighbors than the gradient vector has components. So, every time you get this calculation of the distance with the gradient vector, now C has the number of more neighbors. So, in least square method, a gradient essentially is going to be computed by an optimization procedure. So, you calculate this gradient by an optimization procedure. So, let us find the minimum of the function is GC, and GC can be defined as summation k equals to 1 to NBC weight factor Wk phi Fk minus phi C plus delta phi C dot RCFK. So, this is square. Now, if I expand this one slightly more, so I will get k equals to this. I have this Wk, then I can write delta phi k minus delta x k del phi by del x at C. So, that is one component, del y k del phi by del y C plus del z k del phi by del z C. So, that is the term, and then you get the closure of this bracket, which is going to be the square, and closure of the other one, where your Wk is some weighting factor. So, using that you get this term. Now, the other terms which are involved there, delta phi k is phi Fk minus phi C, delta xk is R Cfk dot I, delta yk equals to R Cfk dot j, and delta zk is R Cfk dot k. So, ijk. Now, the minimization of this function can be obtained, minimization of GC can be obtained by enforcing some condition. The condition is that del del GC of del phi by del x equals to del GC of del phi by del y equals to del GC of del phi by del z. These are all 0. So, once you get this minimization function or the mathematics, which will actually get you back some sort of an involved mathematical expression k1 to NBC, which will get you 2 Wk delta xk minus delta phi k plus delta xk del phi by del x C, delta yk del phi by del y C plus delta zk del phi by del z C, which is 0, number 1. So, that comes from the first expression. Second expression gets you back the similar expression, but it is on yk. So, it will be delta phi k plus delta xk del phi by del x C plus delta yk del phi by del y C plus delta zk del phi by del z C. So, that gets you the second one, and the third condition will get you another condition or expression on delta zk. So, which is phi k del phi by del x C plus del phi by del y c. So, one can take the derivative of the previous expression and can obtain all these conditions. So, you get from here you get all these three conditions. So, each of them corresponding to the first one actually corresponding to this derivative, the second one corresponding to this derivative, third one corresponding to this derivative. So, you obtain these conditions which one can write in some sort of a matrix form, and if you write in some sort of a matrix form, this will look like summation k equals to 1 to NBC Wk delta xk that is first term, k equals to 1 to NBC Wk delta yk xk delta yk, third term k equals to 1 to NBC Wk delta xk delta yk. So, that is what, and the second term will contribute to Wk delta yk xk, and similarly you get Wk delta yk delta yk, and the third one is k equals to 1 to NBC Wk delta yk delta zk. This is k equals to Wk delta zk delta xk Wk zk yk 1 2, and you get on the factor which is getting multiplied is that del phi by del c at c, del phi by del y at c, del phi by del z at c, which is equal to my another vector which is k equals to 1 to NBC Wk delta xk delta phi k. Similarly, k equals to 1 to Wk delta yk delta phi k, k equals to 1 to NBC Wk zk phi k. So, you gotten essentially the matrix form. So, this is the matrix form of the previous equation. Now, how do you find out the solution to this particular equation? So, basically solution, obviously the solution exists if the matrix is not, if this matrix is not singular. So, that means this has a nice condition, or it has to have a non-singular system so that it can have. Then also the choice of Wk. So, that is another factor. So, choice of Wk is also very important, because that will essentially to some extent or rather partially contribute the convergence of this system. So, for example, if Wk is chosen to be 1 for all the neighbors of C, then all neighboring points will have the same weight in computational of the gradient, irrespective of whether they are near or far from point C. So, that is one problem. Actually, points that are further from C will have a more important influences at the error function, which will be more affected by their error. So, this is a very important or crucial element in this particular matrix, because that has lot of impact. So, if you go back to this cell, now since it is taking the neighboring cells information, if for certain values of Wk it may have possibly have the farthest cell has lot of influence on this approximation, and that can lead to some sort of an error. Or alternatively, one can have some alternative choice for WK. So, that one which something which has been used and can be obtained is that WK could be some sort of a inverse distance function, R Fk minus Rc, which is going to be del x Fk square, del y Fk square, del z Fk square. So, that way one can actually estimate the Wk. Okay. So, other option is that one can also use Wk as an inverse distance of power n, where n could be 1, 2, 3 and so on. So, it is also possible not taking the direct inverse, you can take in power of that inverse or with some kind of things. Now, as mentioned, the divergence based gradients is a special case of the least square formulation. So, one can show that. So, what we have said that divergence based gradient is essentially a special case of the least square formulation. So, the formulation that we have for the least square approximation, one can also obtain the divergence based gradient, and we can see that. Let us take an simple Cartesian stencil. So, it is a Cartesian grid. Let us consider that, and C is the center of that cell. As usual in our convention, there is a east cell, this is the west cell, there is a north cell, south cell, top and bottom. Now, this is a 3-dimensional Cartesian cell. So, that is why you have 6 different faces. So, the number of cells which are surrounding also will go up. Now, in this case, what we can write from our previous matrix equation. So, the matrix form will reduce to something like this: Xc minus Xw, other component would be 0, this will be 0, Yn minus Ys 0, this will be 0, Zt minus Zb, that is the first part of it. Then we have del phi by del xc, del phi by del x del yc, del phi by del zc. So, that is there, and right hand side would be phi e minus phi w, phi n minus phi s, phi t minus phi b. Okay. If you solve this above equation, so solving this, what you get, del phi by del x c is phi e minus phi w divided by x e minus x w, and del phi by del y at c is phi n minus phi s divided by y n minus y s. And similarly, del phi by del z at C, phi t minus phi b by z t minus z b. Okay. So, these are the exactly the values which you have obtained from divergence based calculation. So, when we have done the divergence based calculation, we obtain the exactly the same value. So, one can show that this is a special case of least square approximation. Also it can be demonstrated that the accuracy of this resulting gradient is at least first order. So one can write down the Taylor series expansion for phi r minus phi r c equals to delta phi c dot r minus r c, which is order of r square. So when solved for this would be some sort of a order of r. So at least it is an accuracy in that sense. Okay. So now the other point comes here is that how do we interpolate gradients to phase. So far what we are doing is that we are doing the calculation for the at cell center. So we are getting the gradient calculation at the cell center. Now important point is that how we transform them back to the cell faces. So what we have looked at in the diffusion equation is that non-orthogonal grids require some sort of a correction term involving the gradients at control volume faces. So situation the gradients need to be interpolated from the control volume centroids where they are computed to the control volume faces, they will be used. So from here it can be transferred to the face. So that is another challenge, how do we do that. So one can look at that some simple stencil. So this is what one stencil where it is interpolated stencil, that means I have the cell center and then I want to calculate at the face, and the other case is that corrected gradient at the face. So once you look at these two, this gradient of the face which are the same stencil, I mean the C and F and the surrounding elements, if you look at it, they are having the same stencil, but ideally they should be same, but when you do the calculation some sort of a corrections is required if there is a some non-orthogonality exists. So one can see how this delta phi c, delta phi a, they are actually uses the information at the cell nodes on can be calculated. So the interpolated flux would be at the face, and that can be obtained some sort of an averaging of cell center C. So essentially using these two information it can be obtained. Now it is very also much important to look at. So this is the stencil, and then if you look at this particular figure where you have this, essentially you have this particular first figure, what you have the, you have two nodes. So the gradients at C and F. So you have these two where the cell center gradients are available, and then when you want to calculate at the flux, so delta phi at face some sort of averaging of delta phi c and delta phi f. So that can be obtained using by some sort of an averaging procedure. Now how you obtain that? You look at that the gradient vectors, they are in this picture. If you take this from here to here and if you just draw the vectors here, so the vectors actually pointing the these two vectors, and then you can join them and get the averaging of these two, and then you can obtain that. Also it is a little bit important for this stencil of the gradient at the face to be heavily based on the nodes which are connected between them. So there are normal surface vectors, distance vectors, and all these are become important. And how, if you put these things in that vector form, you can actually get this kind of a gradient at face with its values from nodes. So, this is how you can look at that triangle, and by having that vector algebra you can find out the delta F at face. So, if I have to expand this one mathematically, how do I write that? This is essentially delta F at face plus there will be some sort of an phi f minus phi c divided by d c f minus delta f f dot E c f and then E c f. So, this is some sort of a correction. So, this correction interpolated phase gradient. So, where you can have delta phi f equals to G c delta phi c plus G f delta phi f, and E c f would be d c f by d c f and d c f is R f minus R c. So, one can find out these calculations using this expression and then using the information of delta phi c and delta phi f, some error calculation, and these two are essentially the position vectors. So, this how you can actually obtain. So, important thing is that this process, this is applicable for both structured and unstructured grids. Having said that, again you can recall the unstructured grid or the structured grid is a special case of unstructured grid. So, one can always come back and the formulation which is used for the unstructured grid can be always used for the structured grid, and one can come back to that and get that information. But for unstructured grids, while the stencil used for the phase gradient might not be decreased, the gradient across a face will still be based on the nodes which are connecting the faces. So, that essentially takes care of the gradient calculation, and what we have looked at is that the gradients at different options and using both compact stencil and both the extended stencil. So, now once we are done with the gradient calculation, essentially in the diffusion term discretization equation you can see that now you have obtained from your diffusion equation you get the matrix which is a order like this. So, you get the linear equation. So, this is my linear system. So, once I have discretized my equation system, we obtain the linear equation in this kind of fashion. So, this should be again true when you do the complete convection diffusion term or rather complete fluid flow problem equations, but now it is a time we should look at how you get a solution for that linear system. Now, we have done the discretization for the diffusion system. Once you do the discretization, you finally get back that equation in terms of this linear system, which you can think about. Now, what are the process of getting the system solved? There are primarily two approaches one can adopt. So, one approach is essentially I have a matrix, a variable to be found out, and the right hand side vector. So, what one can do, one can adopt a direct approach. That means what you do in the direct approach, you get directly the A inverse, or one can solve iteratively. And secondly, also what you can see, each row here actually they correspond to some sort of an element Aij. So, for second row, second element means this A22. So, any of these Aij, this is nothing but the measures of the strength of phi, because that is multiplied with second element on the variable. Okay. So, every row represents a equation defined over one element. So, that is on that and the computational domain, and the non-zero coefficient of this is going to get you the solution for that system. Now, what are the certain properties of this particular matrix? They are going to be sparse matrix. Sparse matrix in the sense, for some locations you might have the coefficients, others are 0. So, that is what it is going to have. And other hand, you can have largely sparse, that means you have lot of 0, or less sparse, that means you have less zeros. So, depending on the element or the coefficients, actually this matrix could be of any nature. And also sometimes when you look at the structural grid, or when you discretize the equation system in the structure grid, it can also get you the banded matrix. So, that means it may highly possible you can have some sort of a band like that, or some sort of a band like that. So, that is also possible that you can get back some sort of a banded matrix in nature, but in reality or naturally most of the time the matrix what you get, and that is a sparse system. Now, when you go to the direct approach, how you can solve it? Basically you can get the direct inverse. So, now that immediately gets you some sort of a problem. When you have a large A, then getting that inverse is computationally very expensive. You require large memory, you require heavily computing power. So, that is essentially for a large system one can think about it is impractical. And when you talk about the physical problem, this matrix is going to be some sort of a n by n, and this n is the number of total cells count in your 2-dimensional domain, and when it goes to 3-dimensional you can think about the size. So, for a large system getting a direct method is absolutely impractical, and that is why what people have done, they have gone back to some sort of a iterative process. That means you consider this system, linear system, and then you solve iteratively to get the linear system solved, and through some sort of an minimization of the error. So, when you have this big linear system, the one option, as we said, direct option where you get the direct A inverse, other option is the iterative process. And what you do in the iterative process, that you some sort of a get some error function which is going to be b minus a phi, and try to minimize this error and go close to the solution of phi. So, that is how you get it. So, this is heavily computationally expensive, has serious limitations on large scale problem, but on the same time this guy is very handy for large scale problem or rather practical systems, and one of the very much preferred method for linear solver in modern day CFD calculations, because the direct methods are very much restricted to the small scale problem or academics problem, but large scale realistic problem or for community prefers to get iterative solvers, and there are a lot of methods which have been devised based on iterative methods, how quickly one can get a. So, the important factors which will be again associated, the stability, then convergence, then rate of convergence or rather convergence rate, then approximation or the error. So, these are the things again one need to consider for looking at the iterative method. So, if you look at the picture, you have a system, basically you had the diffusion equation. Since we have discussed the diffusion equation, so that is nothing but the PD, you have that, you apply discretization, and regarding the discretization whatever issues that can be associated like structured grid, unstructured grid, orthogonality, non-orthogonality, gradient computation, boundary condition, everything includes in this block of discretization, and that once you apply here, that lead to the linear system. Once you get a linear system, you need a solution, and solution only get you the variable phi. So, in the every node of the domain which you can get, and that can represent the physical process. So, that is how it closes the loop. Now, we have done up to this much, now we are at this stage. So, we need to see how we can find a solution to the linear system, that means A phi equals to B or Ax equals to B, which can be a representative solution for a physical process. So, to do that you have couple of these approaches, but underlying phenomena or the component which lies or becomes very important is the properties which are associated with this matrix or the large matrix. So, one has to know certain properties of this linear system before moving ahead with any kind of this solver calculation, because the solver calculations would get you a flavor of how to get the direct approach or the iterative process to get a solution for phi, but that involves those assuming the properties of A which is the backbone of this calculation process. So, what we need to do next is the talking about some properties very quickly, and once we do that we will move to the calculation of this direct solver. So, with that objective in mind we will look at that some properties of these matrices. So, essentially what we are talking here is this large matrix A. So, that is what is our point of concern, and so the matrix is of order, it is a real matrix because it cannot be imaginary, then you cannot have solution. So, that is a first information that you have, it is a real matrix, and in generic sense you could say it is a m by n system. So, what essentially it assume, it is not a square matrix. So, if again these are all generic synonyms, if m equals to m then it will become square matrix, but when we do the discussion the m by n system, that is what we will talk is certain array of real numbers, that number 1. So, the set of all these m by n matrices is a real vector space denoted by n by m. So, now once you go back to this matrix, it essentially all its row vector and column vector. So, there are m row vector, there are n column vectors, and they are form some sort of a vector space denoted by this real expression. So, the complex matrices are defined separately and the matrix represents the linear mapping between two vector spaces of finite dimension n and m. So, that means I have set of some row vectors, these are m row vectors and I have certain n vectors which are column vectors. So, these are very important property. Operations, if you look at the matrix operations, so what we are talking about A m by n. So, the matrix operation you can have addition of the matrices. So, the elements can be added which are very simple. If you have a 2 by 2 system, you add the 2 by 2 system, the corresponding elements can be added. You can multiplication by a scalar. If you multiply by a scalar, each of its element is going to be multiplied by that factor alpha, and then if you multiply by another matrix. So, the important property for the multiplication is that I am trying to get a matrix which is C A by multiplication of A and B. So, A is m by n, so B has to be n p something. So, that means the A is m by n and B has to be n by p. So, these two dimensions they need to be same, then only the multiplication is possible, and that means the number of columns and the number of rows in B, number of columns in A and number of rows in B, they need to be equal, then only you get the multiplication by this kind of approach. Transposition, transposition is the matrix, how you write the transpose. So, if you have a R m by m matrix, then the transpose of the matrix would be n by m. So, if A is m by n, the transpose is A n by m, that is how, and you can symbolically write C alpha I j is A j I. Transpose conjugate, for complex matrices the transpose conjugate matrix denoted by A h or is there. So, A h is A bar transpose, A bar means here the bar represents the complex matrix and that is the transpose bar is going to be the equivalent of same. These are very important properties that you have for the matrix. Now, you come square matrix, that is one important square root matrix, as I already said m equals to n becomes square matrix. Matrix inversion, so basically eigenvalues. So, identity matrix is if you have a 2 by 2 system or 3 by 3 system, the diagonal elements are 1 and otherwise all the elements are 0, that is the identity matrix for any. So, this is 3 by 3 system. Now, similarly the its notation is I. So, property of a identity matrix that if you multiply it with any matrix, whether in the right hand multiplication root or the left hand multiplication root, you get back the A. So, identity matrix actually does not change the property of the original matrix. So, that is one of the important information that one should keep. Again, inverse of A when it exists is a matrix C such that if A multiplied with C and C multiplied with A, it actually gives you back the identity matrix. So, the inverse is rotation, and just we have said that for the direct method of the linear system solution, you need to find out the inverse. So, you should know how inverse can be calculated. Now, what is eigenvalue? Eigenvalue is the complex scalar lambda is an eigenvalue of the square matrix A if a non-zero vector such that A u is lambda u, and this lambda is going to be the eigenvalue. So, the vector is the eigenvector and the associated values will be lambda, and the set of all eigenvalues of A is the spectrum of A, and one can write that eigenvalues of A by lambda A. If lambda is the eigenvalue of A, if and only if determinant is 0. So, this is the criteria that, so that leads to a some characteristics polynomial. It depends on the size of the matrix. If it is a 3 by 3 matrix, and then it would be the characteristics polynomial of third order. If it is 4 by 4, fourth order. So, it gives you the depending on the size of A that order polynomial, and once you solve that polynomial, the root of the polynomials are going to be the lambda. So, this is what exactly it means, the characteristics polynomial. Now, if lambda belongs to lambda A, if and only if lambda is a root of the characteristics polynomial. This, as I said, when you get this equation, the root of the characteristics polynomials are going to the representative lambda for this system. What is spectral radius? This is again going to be an important information or the component that would be used while we will be talking about iterative process or iterative method for the linear system. It is the maximum eigenvalue or the mod of the maximum eigenvalue. So, it is denoted by rho. Trace of A is written as the sum of the diagonal elements of A. So, if I have a and some diagonal element sitting there, these are some element. So, the trace is like that, and the determinant of A would be the product of all the eigenvalues of A counted with their multiplicity. So, that means if I find out some lambda 1, lambda 2 and so on, the as long as they are distinct, the multiplication or the product of those are going to be the determinant of A. For example, let us say A is 2, 1, 3, 0. Calculate that, you will find out what is lambda, what is trace, what is determinant. So, all these you can find out from finding the lambda. Then since the rows and the columns of A, they form some sort of a vector space, it is good to know what are those spaces and the range. Range would be belongs to R to the power n. The null space is essentially a vector space belongs to R to the power n. So, which will be solving this vector, the null space vector, by solving x equal to 0. Since A has m by n system, the null space belongs to n. Then the range is the linear span of the columns of A. Rank of the matrix, the rank of the matrix will determine its a number of independent column it has. So, if you have a 3 by 3 system and the 3 by 3 system, if it has all 3 columns which are linearly independent, the rank would be 3. So, that is why it is less than equals to 3. So, the maximum possible rank for a m by n system could be the n, otherwise it has to be always less than n. So, it can be find out through the elimination process. Now, rank A is the number of, as I said, linearly independent column or linearly independent rows of A. If A is of full rank, that means otherwise A is rank deficient. Now, you have a rank of A, the dimension of that and dimension of the null space should be n. So, this is a very important equation. That means, I have a m by n system and the number of independent columns are the going to be the rank. So, the dimension of that plus the dimension of null space. So, null space is essentially get you back the independent rows and that total is n. So, once you apply that, or the dimension of the A transpose and null space of A transpose is m. So, types of the matrices. So, it could be square matrices when m equals to n, symmetric matrices A transpose equals to A transpose, Hermitian matrices AH equals to A, skew symmetric when A transpose equal to minus A, skew Hermitian AH equals to minus A, normal AH A is AH. The matrix is non-negative when its components are greater than 0, that means they are not negative. Similarly, unitary matrix, orthogonal matrix. So, now this unitary orthogonal matrix, these are going to be important matrices which are. Now, another important thing is that matrix with the structures. So, these are the informations which are essentially going to be used, and now the other properties that we are going to look at in the follow up lecture. Thank you.